Alright everyone, I'm not exactly a fan of the FBI in general, but at least it's now under sane leadership, and so now it's retrospectively looking at the Honeypot op against the Trump campaign from almost 10 years ago. When the Trump campaign was young, James Comey and others within the FBI honeypotted the campaign. Apparently there were two female agents that sort of palled around with male and possibly bisexual female staffers in the Trump campaign to try to dig up dirt on them. This is highly illegal, extremely politically unethical, not that there's much ethics in politics, so I digress, and completely immoral. And so the FBI does need to look into it. The only thing that can investigate the FBI is the FBI, which is extremely absurd, but, you know, it's just the way that things work. Again, the very least, even if it's considered, I guarantee the liberal legacy media is going to come out and say, well, this is a political witch hunt. Which is interesting because they're literally investigating a potential political witch hunt. There was never any reason to believe that Donald Trump was being controlled by Russians, that his campaign was funded by Russians, the Pissgate thing was always a joke, etc., etc., etc. The Steele dossier was filled with bullshit. And was paid for by the Hillary Clinton campaign. We've seen this over and over again. If Donald Trump, through Kash Patel therefore, wants to try to get a broad overview of what the hell happened, that's not political witch hunt. It's going after political witch hunt. It's trying to get disclosure for the public, trying to have transparency. We don't normally get that from the FBI, now do we? Most of the things that they do are completely opaque. Everything's so heavily classified that even members of Congress can't look into most of it. And so there's no way to tell whether they're actually, number one, properly doing their jobs, and number two, not motivated by politics, religion, ethnicity, hey, liberals, or anything like that in their operations. It's impossible to tell. So hopefully they can get to the bottom of what the hell happened. We have a general idea. We know that a political witch hunt after the Trump campaign was sparked by political insiders through the FBI, and that they spied on his campaign, and they released a bunch of documents that were bullshit, and we know all of this, so that's old hat. New hat, old hat. But we don't know all of the details, and the FBI is now investigating itself, which I find refreshing. I think that that's a good thing. When you're FBI, you have access to all the FBI's classified material. I would not be surprised if a bunch of documents were burned in the middle of the night and a bunch of servers were bleach bitted or something like that. I wouldn't be surprised to find that that was the case. Well, we got to protect these agents. They did their job honorably, and now they're retired and stuff. But they never existed. You're never going to know their names because there's no documentation of them ever working for the FBI. This would not surprise me. This is the sort of thing that these bureaus are capable of doing. Ultimately, in the end, they're capable of covering their tracks very, very well. Let's hope that in this case they slipped up. They left behind a digital reservoir of sorts on a server that they forgot to wipe. One piece of paper is still there, and they forgot to burn it. It was sitting in a closet somewhere, something like that. Don't underestimate the ability of bureaus as well to engage in inefficiency. This is what Doge is about. They lose fucking paperwork. They lose track of data. It gets breached by hackers. People either exist or they don't exist. Sometimes you're never sure. This is the way that government works. It's like the movie Brazil, and if you haven't watched it, I guarantee that you will enjoy it. Dystopian movie from the 1980s. I believe it was British, actually. And Brazil is, I believe it's a reference to the jungle, basically. It's about a culture that becomes so corporatized and so bureaucratic that nothing makes sense. And I'm not going to give you any further spoilers, because you probably want to watch the movie. I bet most of you have not, actually. It's better than 1984. Actually, which is, you know, dystopian film-wise, it's as good as V for Vendetta. I know that movie has become cringe because of Anonymous and stuff like that, but still a good movie. Come on, just admit it. It's a good movie. So the honeypot against Trump is being investigated. Allegedly, it involves Comey's own directive orders, among other things. Probably involves aspects of the direct Biden administration, or what would become the Biden administration, as well as people like the Clintons with the Steele dossier, things like that. These are all intertwined. It's basically like looking at a mass of spaghetti. It's going to be difficult to tell where one noodle begins and another noodle ends. It's that convoluted. The problem is condensing this information enough so that the public becomes acutely aware of what happened and how it happened and why it happened. Otherwise, they get overloaded with too much information. So they should parse it apart, much like with the Epstein files. If you simply release the files, people's eyes will glaze over. They'll get cognitive dissonance. Likewise, with the Honeypot op story, if you release the full report to the public and it's 500 pages long, it's not going to be absorbed as well. What'll happen is the legacy media will spin it and say, well, yeah, but it was justified. Donald Trump really was controlled by Russia. It's just that this particular op was maybe, not necessary, something like that. They'll make excuses. They'll wagon circle. You know that they will. They've been doing this for years now. It's been a thing since 2015. Oh, well, yeah, they did something wrong, but in the end it was kind of justified. By the way, Orange Man bad. And that's sort of the excuse that they give. That's about all. Peace out.